up, Alpha 1000 Nation? How's everyone doing today? Hopefully, everyone's having a great day. If not, I hope it gets better from here. Alright, we are back with Coffeehouse Crime. This one is titled The Boy in the Chimney, the Unsolved Case of Joshua Maddux. It just caught my attention. It said The Boy in the Chimney. I was like, why is there a boy in the chimney? I don't know if it's going to be messed up or not. If it is, stop letting me pick my videos myself. That's all I can say. The one I just did, that chapter, that wasn't too bad. Too many what ifs, but not bad. So maybe I'm getting a little better at it. Maybe. All right, let's go ahead and get into today's story. Go ahead and turn the lights down low. Put on something comfy. Cuddle up with someone special. Let's get... I don't know. Let's get curious, because I'm curious on how this little feller got in that chimney. Let's get curious.
An 18-year-old boy goes missing, to be found dead 7 years later, only 2 blocks from where he lived. Whatever happened to Joshua Maddux? Was his death accidental, or was it murder? My name's Adrian. Let's investigate.
Hey, Adrian. I never knew your name before. Nice to meet you, bud. I'm not gonna lie. Watching this always makes me want my coffee, and it's not there. And my coffee's not here. It's like, you can't watch Coffeehouse Crime without coffee, bro.
Joshua Maddux was born on March the 9th, 1990. He grew up with his father, Michael, his brother Zachary, and his 2 sisters Ruth and Kate in Woodland Park, Colorado. After being homeschooled for the first 2 years, Joshua Maddux enrolled into Woodland Park High School. He was a gifted, intelligent young man. He was creative, an artist, a writer, and a guitarist. He was really into his music, and he had good grades as a child. He had a great sense of humour and wit, and he had many close friends. He was also nicknamed Dwa by his sisters, having a very loving personality. In 2006, his brother took his own life. Joshua was, of course, devastated along with the rest of his family. Two years later, on May the 8th, Joshua woke up in the morning, told his sister Kate that he was going out for a walk. That'd be the last time that anyone saw Joshua alive. With Josh being a lover of the outdoors, it wasn't unusual for him to go out for a walk. He would often go by himself or with friends. But as the days passed, it became more and more strange that he wasn't coming home. So after 5 days of Joshua missing, they finally reported his disappearance to the police. On the 13th of May, Joshua's father called the police to report him missing. He said,
"I got up one morning and Josh was there, then he just never came home. The next day he still didn't come home. I called his friends, nobody'd seen him. Nobody knows where he is."
The community searched for Joshua for days, and then weeks, and then months in the surrounding park area. But no dice Joshua was never found. Joshua's sister eventually shared a post on her Facebook. Since Josh was 18, it has been reasonable to assume he may have decided to leave town to start a new life. As one of his 2 older sisters, I have always chosen to believe that this was the case. I have expected Josh to return home to my father's house at any time with a wife and small children so that they can meet their grandparents and 2 aunts. Josh has always been known for his musical and literary talent, so maybe we would find him playing music with a band on tour, or catch him writing successful novels under a pen name, so that he could keep his preferred lifestyle of solitude in the woods. Now, no one had any reason to believe Josh was in danger. He wasn't that kind of guy. He graduated from high school with good grades, he was well liked by his friends, and he often kept out of trouble. He had been doing well and he was happy around the time that he disappeared. The police had no reason to suspect that he was in danger, so they filed a missing persons report under his name. The case eventually went cold. His father, Mike, retained ownership of the house that he grew up in case, whenever he did decide to come home, that he would know exactly where to go. but no news of Josh ever came forward. The case just simply went cold. Fast forward 7 years, and on Friday the 12th of August 2015 at approximately 2:30 in the afternoon, police were called to a residence on Meadowlark Lane in Woodland Park, Colorado. A body had been found during the demolition of an old cabin. Murphy, a then 79-year-old president of Murphy Constructors, was tearing the property down to make way for a new wilderness development going on in the area, creating 32 single-family homes. Murphy's construction crew were in the middle of demolishing the cabin when they came across the unsightly discovery. They found the remains of a human body inside the chimney as they were peeling the chimney's steel casing away from the brickwork. The body was roughly 1 meter off the ground inside the chimney in a fetal position. Murphy said the knees of the body were above its head, but the legs had disjointed, so he believed it was a body that had been there for a long time. He also noted that one hand was covering the face. The body was found to be wearing a thermal shirt only. That was the only item of clothing. The body was naked from the waist down. So a bit of history on the cabin. The cabin used to belong to the Murphy family. It was bought by Chuck Murphy's parents in Woodland Park, and it used to be part of a homestead to the Thunderhead Ranch. The Thunderhead Ranch was somewhere where legal gambling and parties took place back in the wild days. But once the wild times had settled, the property was then officially bought by Murphy's parents, and Murphy's brother lived in the cabin for over 30 years. After that time, the property was then turned into a rental, and that lasted for a while until the property eventually became vacant for the next 10 or so years. The property would only be checked occasionally by Chuck Murphy, either for storage or to make sure that there were no squatters or anyone else living in the property unlawfully. Chuck Murphy recalled that
The place was damp. It smelled like hell. There was raccoon poop all over the place. We really had no reason to go in there except to tear the building down.
Eventually, dental records came back of the body, and the body was confirmed to belong to that of Joshua Maddux's. The cabin only a mile away from Josh Maddux's previous home. With these road images from Google Maps dating back to 2012, it's eerie to think that while these street images were taken, Joshua's body was just on the other side of that chimney wall. According to autopsy results, Joshua had no drugs in his system. He had no broken bones. He had no bullet wounds or knife wounds. Therefore, the coroner Al Bourne ruled that his death was accidental, most likely by falling down the chimney. He also stated that his death had not been instant and probably was due to something along the lines of hypothermia. So a sad but resolved...
God, this is heart-wrenching. Okay, a few questions. Hopefully they get answered. For one, evidently they didn't do a good enough job while searching these cabins, which I get. I mean, it's covered in crap and it's disgusting. You don't really want to go in there and spend a whole lot of time and catch something you don't want to, like they say, you don't want to catch something that Ajax won't wash off. I get that. And being damp and stuff, there's chances of black mold. No, I understand. I really do. But good God. I don't know how to feel about that in any way, shape, or form. That's awful. And why was he not wearing any breeches? Why would anyone get half naked and crawl down a chimney?
Case, right? Joshua was out exploring on the day that he disappeared. He was an adventurous type, so he took to the roof of the cabin, climbed into the chimney, tried to get into the property down the chimney, and accidentally slipped on the way and unfortunately died. Accidentally. You'd be forgiven for thinking this is what happened if these were the only details we knew, but there's a lot more. To start, the cabin's owner, Chuck, he had raised doubts about the coroner's theory. because years before he had installed rebar at the top of the chimney to prevent raccoons and other animals getting in to the cabin. This was only done about 12 to 15 years ago, so only a few years really before Joshua went missing. Murphy said,
"There's no way that guy crawled inside that chimney with that steel webbing. He didn't come down that chimney."
Murphy is extremely experienced in the construction industry. He is very likely to know how long steel rebar lasts in a chimney, and there's also no reason that he would have lied about this. This means it's much more likely that Josh entered the chimney from inside the cabin rather than from out. Also, if he did actually climb down the chimney from outside, the leading theory of his death is through compressive asphyxia. This is where in a chimney your legs are forced above your chest, and the compression of your legs onto your chest actually prevents you from breathing. But Murphy reported that Josh's legs were downwards as if he was in a fetal position. It's still possible to die from compressive asphyxia with your legs downwards, but it's much more difficult. He would have also had to enter the chimney head first. Next, when Joshua's body was found, it was found only wearing a thermal shirt. He wasn't wearing any other clothes, no socks, no shoes. And strangely enough, his clothes were found neatly folded inside the room of the fireplace. This indicates he was probably in the property at some point that day. And finally, Chuck Murphy noticed that the breakfast bar had been ripped away from the wall in the kitchen and placed alongside the fireplace, perhaps as if to conceal or block Joshua, or Joshua from being found. The plot is thickening. The case was reopened again, but unfortunately the case was concluded just the same as it initially had been: accidental. So with these new details, the only way that Joshua's death could have been independent and accidental is if Joshua went into the cabin, took off all of his clothes other than his shirt, folded them up neatly in the room, then walked outside naked just wearing a shirt, got onto the top of the roof and climbed down the chimney head first, and then became trapped. Yeah, that doesn't sound credible
Alright, sounds like a bunch of bullshit, don't know about
me, Chief. That leaves two other options, really. Joshua was in the cabin, he stripped down to just his shirt, and then independently and willingly got into the fireplace himself, and then into the chimney, which I don't think he would do. Why would you do that? Or he was murdered and his body was put there. Let's look at that final option into more detail.
Let's do.
During the investigation, the coroner had mentioned that several phone calls were made to both the police and the coroner's office. These phone calls suggested leads of possible suspects that may have been involved in the killing of Joshua Maddux. One claim cited hearing the suspect say, "I put Josh in a hole." Although this tip was ignored, one of those sources spoke out on Reddit a few years later. The source said,
"I went to high school with this skinny dorky hippie named Andy who played guitar in a band. I was never good friends with him or anything, but a year or so after I graduated, one of my good friends, Josh, started hanging out with him and then went missing. Last I heard, Andy was telling another friend, yeah, me and Josh have been spending a lot of time together. We're planning on a trip to New Mexico."
The person in question, Andy, was known as Andrew Richard Newman in the Woodland Park area in Colorado. He was a confirmed student at the same high school as Joshua Maddux.
He looks rough, bro. Like he stuck his finger in an outlet while someone was peeing on him, then threw him in the dryer. Did you see that? I mean, not everyone can have luscious locks like I do, and I don't judge y'all for that, but damn.
And Andrew and Joshua were also both enthusiastic about music and relatively the same age, so there's a likelihood that the two knew of each other and were potentially even friends. Although we know that Joshua evidently didn't go with Andy to New Mexico, we do know that Andy actually did in fact go to New Mexico in 2009. In May 2009, while in New Mexico, Andy befriended a man at a bar called James Walito. James Walito was a caretaker of a disabled man, and while there, Andy asked James if he could crash at his place for a while. James, being the good Samaritan that he is, he let Andy go with him and his disabled friend back to his apartment. While home, Walito took a shower, and after he got out the shower, he came back to the living room where he found his disabled friend dead, stabbed to death in his wheelchair. Conveniently, Andrew Newman was gone. In June of the same year in Texas, Andy was taken to the police station after being caught in a property where the homeowner hadn't given him consent to be there. Andrew was actually found with the homeowner's 2 children, both of them under the age of 16. He didn't like the way that Andy was behaving, so he took him to the police station. While there, Andy Newman agreed to giving his fingerprints, and his fingerprints actually matched those of the murder scene back in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where the disabled man had been stabbed to death. Andrew also admitted to another murder, not that of Joshua Maddux's, but of a woman in Taos, New Mexico. He claimed that he killed her and stuffed her body in a barrel. However, the police in New Mexico already had a suspect, so the case was dropped from Andy Newman. Right. Andrew Newman's whereabouts throughout the next several years are unknown.
Right? I mean, if someone, I get though, you can't just take a person confessing to everything. I mean, it could just be some bullshit. But damn, take him into custody just for the shits and giggles of him. They'd be like, all right, you want to confess? Just stay here for a while.
Probably because he was in prison for most of it. However, he picked up a fresh sentence in 2012 in Utah. This sentence included 7 charges, one of them being the assault of a police officer. He was then charged yet again in 2015 in Jacksonville, Florida, for trespassing onto a property. And once again, he was picked up in February 2018 for burglary and trespassing onto a property. In December 2018, Andrew was then picked up in Brazos County in Texas for the assault of 3 police officers, where he was later charged for burglary of an unoccupied structure back in Florida and fleeing Florida as a fugitive. At the time of this video, he's still currently behind bars, serving his time in Brazos County in Texas. He even made news back in March 2019 for assaulting a detentions officer while in prison. So, what's my theory on the Joshua Maddux case? Well, on May 8th, 2008, Joshua Maddux left his house. He told his sister he was going out for a walk and that he'd be back later. So it sounds like he did plan to return home. Later that day, either through force or voluntarily, he entered the cabin on Meadowlark Lane, and while in the cabin, Joshua's fate turned into murder by another individual. Tests confirmed that there were no bullet holes, no knife wounds, no marks on his skin, but what they couldn't rule out was asphyxiation, for example in a chimney, which means that he could have also died from being strangled. The lack of clothes suggests that there could have been some sort of sexual activity, either voluntarily or involuntarily. After the murder, in which the motive is unknown, Joshua's body was then forced into the chimney via the fireplace. The breakfast bar was then ripped off the wall in the kitchen and put in front of the fireplace to conceal off the area, potentially to block off the smell, and to prevent people from looking in the chimney and discovering the body. What we do know is that Joshua went missing in 2008, shortly after allegedly beginning to know Andrew Newman. Andrew Newman would soon move away and begin building his long streak of charges on trespassing, assault, and potentially even murder. It's not a large stretch of the imagination to think maybe he could have done that back in 2008. But with Andy's nomadic lifestyle, police could...
Right, because it's trespassing and murder and all that shit just rolled into one. I mean, I see where you're going with this, bud. I see where you're going.
Never really pinpoint where he was during the time of Joshua Maddux's initial days. And with the crime scene aging 7 years before it was found, and then the demolition of the crime scene shortly after, and Joshua Maddux's body being cremated, it's very unlikely that we'll ever find out what exactly happened to Joshua Maddux. And while we can theorize about the links between Angie and Josh, none of this is concreted in evidence. So unfortunately, this is something that will probably forever stay unknown as a mystery. We can only hope that maybe one day someone comes forward. But until then, this case will lie closed.
That's awful too, like...
Hi there, and thank you for watching my video.
It's hard on the family to not know. It is. It's awful, it's pitiful. I understand you do something, you try to get away with it, but... It sounds like to me the dude's going to be a jailbird for probably the remainder of his life anyway, so... Give the family some peace, I reckon. That's awful. That's awful. Shitty little shit. Shitty little shit. He didn't look right. You could tell by his face. He got one of them faces. It was there. Like I said, can't have gorgeous, luscious locks like this. I forgive you, but it's okay. It's okay. All right. If you enjoyed today's video as much as I enjoyed today's video, please leave a thumbs up. If you're a fan of the spooky, scary, strange, deranged things that just make you want to cry ever so tenderly into your pillow, then, hit that subscribe button. Yeah. I know, I just feel bad. Like, oh, I want to give someone a hug. Yeah. All right. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. I mean, he shoved the poor kid into the fireplace, and he admitted to killing a woman and shoving her into a barrel, and they're just going to drop it. I mean, that's two things. He killed somebody and shoved them in a hole. I mean,